I thought I'd share something that's been on my mind for the last few days. I was just driving and thinking, and I've noticed in the last several months outbursts of anger from a lot of different people, and just uh, bad moods, just real ugly attitudes um, in their interactions with people in front of me, around me, or even to me as well, in just day to day interactions with people. And sometimes it just kind of racks your brain. Why is somebody in such a bad mood or so ugly to you? And there's so many reasons why people are mad or upset or frustrated or angry. But one of the things that I've identified the most is that when you do not have clarity that you are hearing from God in your life somehow, there can be a sense of purposelessness. There could be a sense of, am I doing the right thing? Am I wasting my life? I could be doing better. It brings about a discontentment, or it could help add to discontentment. And you say, well, what are you saying? I don't understand what you're getting at. Well, I believe, as a believer in Christ, not a perfect believer by far, but just a regular person striving to live a decent life that believes in God, believes in Christ. I believe that when we have direction from God and we have peace, that we have finally have a place where we know where we should live, we know what kind of work we should do, we know what our purpose is. It kind of gives you a contentment, or it gives you more of a peace that your life is meaningful. And what I'm noticing and recognizing is that a lot of people, they're not hearing from God. They're not hearing from God because they don't believe in God, or they believe in God, but they're not trying to seek hearing His voice and His will, His direction. So there's a strong sense of emptiness and purposelessness because they don't have that clarity. Now, this is also another, just to add to that, a lot of people who believe in God are not always going to hear His voice. They're not always going to feel they have direction and peace, that they are doing His purpose and they know exactly where they need to be. And a lot of times that could be because of sin in their life, issues in their life, or maybe something they did wrong, or there's something that they're doing or partaking in that is clouding being able to identify the direction of God in their life. Now, people say, well, when you're hearing from God, what do you mean? Is it voices? Is it this? Is it that? Well, there's a lot of different ways a person can feel that God is speaking to them, and I'm not really going to get into that. That's something that you may want to talk to your local pastor or preacher, or put on something from a minister who teaches the Bible or teaches more about Jesus Christ. But I'm just going to narrow it down to the aspect that when you feel that you're in a place where you have prayed and you meditated and try to seek clarity of where and what you should be doing with your life, that brings a level of contentment, or at least it brings a level of confidence and peace within your being that your life is meaningful. And it takes a little bit of pressure off. just a little. Because let's face it, in this age, a lot of us are living under a lot of pressure. I mean, the dynamics of where this country is and the cost of living, and the list goes on. It can be enough pressure within itself. But if you're not at peace with yourself, and you're not at peace with knowing what you should be doing with your life, and you don't really feel that God is speaking to you to where you have that clarity, then that's when a lot of anger kicks in, and resentment and jealousy. And because you might see somebody that's a little bit more centered in knowing what they're supposed to be doing, or at least they have an idea of they're on the boat. They don't really know which direction it's going, but they are at least on the boat. When you see that, then other people who are not even on the dock, yet along the boat, yet alone knowing where they're going, they can get frustrated, or they can be down on themselves, or they can look at other people who are on the boat of life, and I'm using that as like a metaphor, but they're on this boat of life, and they can sense that, this person has a purpose, and they're at peace with whatever their purpose is. And I guess what I'm just getting at is that, going back to the original topic, we're dealing with people who are angry. We're dealing with all these people that are just short and rude, and just have these ugly attitudes. Well, chances are it's clear they're not hearing from God. But if they're not hearing from God, chances are they're not even in relationship with God. And when you are hearing from God and you have direction, it makes life a little bit more enjoyable. But that doesn't mean that you're just going to accept Jesus in your life. You're going to go to church a few Sundays, and all of a sudden he's just going to lay out this roadmap and say, hey, you're supposed to be a youth leader. You're supposed to volunteer half of your time to Vietnam veterans. You're supposed to be given to soccer moms and soccer kids, and you're supposed to do X, Y, Z, or whatever. No, it's not saying that. It's just saying that once you have clarity and you've been praying and asking God to give you direction, then hopefully you can begin to hear his voice to know exactly kind of where you should live, root out what kind of work you should be doing, and what kind of is your focal points in life. And then from there it expands. But we have a generation where a lot of people, I feel, they don't really have any direction. And not only do they not have direction, but then there's a whole lot of other issues, like not knowing who they are, not having peace with who they are, not having job security, not having any money, maybe having bad credit. And when you put in all these things into the equation, no wonder we're seeing people that are just time bombs. No wonder we're just coming around people who are so cancerous, so toxic. And then you have to get nasty with those people because you want to kind of let them know, hey man, your behavior is toxic. I didn't go into this coffee shop to be snapped at. I didn't go into this tire shop to be treated rudely. I didn't go into this store to be treated rudely. But deep down at the center of the original issue, we're just living in an era where people need to try to listen to what God is saying to them, and also what direction he's leading that individual. Just kind of have a little bit of a roadmap. And I think when a person gets some kind of idea of what they need to do and which way, or even if it's for a season, then now allow them to have peace, a little bit more peace, and a little bit more joy of being alive. It's terrible to see the lifelessness in people today. How so many young people, so many older people, they just act like they don't want to be alive. They just act like they hate people, they hate being alive, they hate their life. Life is just terrible. And it's a terrible time to live in when it's hard to go throughout the day without somebody running you off the road, flicking you off over a parking spot, being rude to you at the coffee shop, being rude to you at work, having to deal with bill collectors that might be rude, to having, or people that you have to pay, and just this attitude where people are just they're not happy and they're not at peace. And I'm not saying life is supposed to be you're just happy, you wake up and you're just feeling wonderful, everything's a Forrest Gump experience. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there comes a point where it should be a higher ratio